I was a little late coming to Old Campus as a freshman because of the sudden and unexpected death of my father. And while you can imagine how devastating that was, it was compounded for me because I was leaving home with the knowledge that my mother was in the final stages of her battle with pancreatic cancer. And so by October, by midterms, I was on this campus having lost both of my parents. And I was feeling incredibly alone, incredibly lonely. You see, I had lost my parents, which were my rock. They were my biggest cheerleaders, my biggest supporters, the ones who believed I could do anything. And I found myself here on campus with a whole group of students, you all, who were so eager and energetic and excited about this, and yet I was feeling really alone. My parents were these incredibly socially minded, social active professionals who I had known. They both grew up pre-civil rights era, dealt with segregation, moved through the Black Freedom Movement, and marched on Washington at Dr. King's famous march. And I had grown up hearing these stories about them. And I knew how they integrated their social activism with their professional lives. But more than that, they were my parents, my loving, supportive parents who loved me and loved my sister and believed we could do anything. And I had all of a sudden lost that and found myself on this campus feeling very alone. And one day, Roseanne Adderley, where's Roseanne? Roseanne Adderley was busy inviting many of us new students, black students in particular, to come and participate with her on Beinecke Plaza at an anti-apartheid rally. And at the time, I'm thinking, apartheid to me, I'm trying to figure this out, what came up for me at the time was my 7th grade social studies class, where my social studies teacher had divided the class into a group that was labeled white, and a group that was colored, and a group that was Bantu, and issued simulated passbooks to the colored and Bantu groups, and proceeded to conduct a class project that simulated South African apartheid. And I, being the only African-American student in the class, remember the embarrassment and shame that I experienced going through this experience. And so that was the first thing that came to mind at Roseanne's mention of apartheid. But everybody else was going, and so I said, well, let me go, let me see what this is about on Beinecke. And when I got to Beinecke Plaza, I experienced there in front of Woodbridge Hall one of the most meaningful experiences of my life. The spirit in there of students and New Haveners coming together in a movement for social justice and social activism, and I understood apartheid being a movement to get Yale to divest its money from corporations that were supporting the racist government in South Africa, and I understood that the administration and corporation at the time were resisting this social activism, and that students and community were coming together in a powerful display of community and power and activism. And there, in that moment, in all of my feeling of aloneness, I felt something at Yale. There was a sense of community and power, and that I imagined must have been what my parents talked about in their stories of civil rights activism. And so in that moment, I found something at Yale that became very powerful for me. In that moment, I saw leaders like Mitty Owens, and I saw Professor Cornel West demonstrate nonviolent, passive resistance to unjust government, unjust policy, and felt something powerful in that moment. I felt a connection, and I felt in my loneliness a connection to my parents. Now, Yale continued to be a very lonely place for me at many times, and I also made great friendships here and had great experiences and learned a lot. And I dealt with depression here, and I dealt with a hole in my soul, and I felt that hole healed over and over and broken open again. And in my hardest moments, I remembered that sense of community that I felt on Beinecke Plaza, on those anti-apartheid rallies. And I went on to become a clinical psychologist who practices right here in the city of New Haven, figuring out ways to develop community and build power in community, and build communities that can hold protest, and communities that can make mistakes and fall and come back together. And I do that work with an eye on creating a more socially just community, a community that can move beyond racism and sexism and all of the isms. And I do that work continuing in a testament, I believe, to my parents, and a testament to everything that I believed here on campus. And I remember the cries on Beinecke that were always, Amandla, no way to, which meant power to the people. And I remember the cries of no justice, no peace. And sometimes even today, in my work, I'll find myself back in a grassroots struggle, in a protest on the streets of New Haven. And in those moments, I believe that all of that was rooted back to the legacy of my parents and the legacy of this place and Beinecke Plaza. Amandla!